Very good morning, class. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
I hope I'm okay. So, good evening, one and all present here. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. So, today we will be moving to the module 2, which is going to deal about the new public administration. I request the host to please mute the audience. I'm getting some disturbances from their side. Yes, thank you so much. I will be presenting my PPT. Bear with me for a minute. I hope the screen is clear. Okay, is the screen audible? Yeah, thank you so much. So today we will be moving on. So as I was telling you that today we will be moving to the module 2, which deals with the new public administration. So if you look into the screen, just a second, I'm showing it.
Madam, sound was voice is not here, ma'am.
It will be, just give me a minute. Okay. Am I audible now? I hope I'm clear. And the screen is visible too. So,
And ma'am, today can you also discuss about important questions, ma'am, please?
okay, sure, I will do it. I will try my maximum. So as I told you, today we will be reading about the second module, that is a new public administration. So let me just tell you a bit of introduction of new public administration. So let me give you a small introduction about new public administration. New public administration, as an, I again request the host to please mute the audience. Yes, thank you. So this emergence of the new public administration is an alternative perspective and which was in a long tradition of public administration theory and thought. Let me tell you this, during the decade of 1960s, the government and its administrative arm came under heavy pressure. They had a heavy pressure from social, political, and there were a wide range of issues which dealt with civil rights, higher education, social welfare, law and order, and urban infrastructures, and so and so certain conditions. Here, while the government and the administration were facing so many problems according to these aspects, the responses and I can say the capacity of the government to respond to these problems were questioned, particularly by younger university-based members of the public administration community. So when all such problems were prevailing in the society, the government couldn't respond capably. So the capability and the capacity and the responsiveness of the government were being questioned by the members of public administration community. So it is when in the September 1968, I'm clear with the date, I'll repeat again, in the month of September, the year 1968, Dwight Waldo, I hope you all must be familiar with this thinker of public administration, Dwight Waldo started this tradition by sponsoring a conference of young public administration scholars at the Minnowbrook Conference site. I hope many of you know about Minnowbrook Conference. At least you might have heard about that. Minnowbrook Conference was Minnowbrook Conference was conducted or was organized at Syracuse University. So this Minnowbrook Conference, which was a conference, especially for the young public administrative scholars, which was
Madam,
organized.
what is the page number, ma'am? Page number.
I'm sorry, I cannot go according to the page number. So let me continue with the Minnowbrook Conference.
Ma'am, you can say unit name.
No, the unit name is the second module, first topic, Minnowbrook Conference 1, 2, and 3. So let me introduce you with the Minnowbrook Conference. This Minnowbrook Conference, if you look in the screen, I will tell you, it has many landmarks, many landmarks and in the growth and in the emergence of new public administration. So fine, this is from the second module. Minnowbrook Conference is the first unit. Minnowbrook Conference 1, 2, and 3 we are going to discuss today. So here, I will tell you, before this emergence of new public administration, a Honey report on higher education for public service in the 1961 was given. The conference on the theory and the practice of public administration was held in 1967. These conferences were held just before Minnowbrook Conference. So as we have to focus on the Minnowbrook Conference, which was organized or conducted in the year 1968. So please remember the year. It is very important for you to remember the year 1968. First of all, let me tell you this. The traditional public administration only emphasized on efficiency and economy. exclusion of other values, and the old administration only promoted the centralized and hierarchical forms of the organization. So it only focused on efficiency and economy. So this new public administration criticized the old public administration. So, because the old public administration couldn't give the perfect ideological or explicit ideological and philosophical framework. And the new public administration has supported an active role, for the social equality. Now, let me tell you about this Minobrook Conference 1, which was organized in the year 1968. This conference marked the beginning of the new public administration. This paved the way for the new public administration. New public administration was markedly different from the perception of public administration. Whatever existing old public administration was there, that was being questioned by the new public administration. It put more emphasis on normative approach in the place of value-free approach. So previously it was not valued. So that value-free approach was replaced with normative approach. And especially in this Minobrook conference, there were 4 goals and 3 anti-goals. Just give me a minute. I'm going to share next slide. Somebody is writing on the screen, so please, I request you to stop that. And also, I will be telling you the 3 goals and the 4 goals and the 3 anti-goals. If you see in the screen, there were 4 goals and 3 anti-goals of the new public administration. In order to achieve the goals, the authors put forth 4 solutions, which has been referred to as 4 Ds. So, if you can concentrate on what has been given or what has been discussed or what was the change that was brought in the Minobrook conference by Dwight Waldo, is, if you look at the 4 points, first one is value. Okay, let me tell you the value. The administrative system, what they wanted to change or what sort of changes they wanted to bring was value. The value is nothing but the administrative system should be value oriented so that there is commitment to ideology and philosophy of the state. So the value neutrality in public administration is neither possible nor desirable. So you can never maintain the values neutrally. So, but you have to try to the maximum to be value oriented. It ultimately stresses the central role of personal organization and values, personal as well as organizational values or ethics, and also it focuses on personal commitment of administrators towards the goal. This is the major change what they wanted to bring. These were some of the aspects that they focused in order to achieve the goals. In order to achieve the goals, they wanted to focus on these aspects. So as I told you, the first aspect is the value. And the second aspect would be relevance. Relevance is nothing but every society has different set of problems. You can name them and the problem will be existed. So every society is different from each other and also will have different set of problems. So as I told you, every society has different set of problems. Therefore, public administration should consider only country specific, area specific, culture specific, ethnocentric changes, or only the socially relevant changes. So then people should see the changes are relevant or as relevant. Thereby, changes should be specific to the needs of the areas and the needs of the people. So whenever you are addressing any problem, it shouldn't be on a generalized way, but it should be specifically, relevance should be there. Relevance, as I told you, country specific, something specifically you have to first deal with the problems. You cannot deal with all the problems at a time. So you need to divide into sections. You need to divide into specific areas. You need to divide according to the cultures. You need to divide according to the ethnocentric changes that are happening. So in such a way, when you address the problems relevant, each problems should be specified and the area should be properly addressed. Only then people will understand the working of the administration. So in order to achieve the goals, the relevance is very important. Relevance aspect is very important to consider. And next, if we see, it is the social equity. So social equity or fairness or justice, you can call anything. New public administration found social equality as the most common vehicle for guiding human development. So it is very clear. Equity or fairness or justice. Somebody have shared the screen, so please stop doing so. I hope you can see my screen. I request the participants, please do not share their screen. So I was discussing about the equity, fairness, and justice. New public administration found justice or equity as a most common vehicle for guiding human development. Social equity means administrators should become the champions of the underprivileged sections of the society. So this is very important for the administrators to lead them, to make them. So the distributive justice and goal of equity should be public administration's basic concern. So ultimately, if you want to achieve the goals of the new public administration, you need to see that equity and fairness and justice should be maintained. And with the distributive justice and goal of equity, that should be public administration's major or first basic concern. Equity is the main motto or the goal should be there for the public administration. And when we see the next important aspect that has to be focused on is change. Change is nothing but new public administration stated that public administration should be change oriented and respond to the various socio-political changes that are occurring in the society. So new public administration clearly mentioned or clearly specified that it should be operational flexible, or flexibility in the operation should be existed. And also adaptability towards the new organization should be adopted always. So whenever there are changes, the existing administrative system should be ready to accept and should be able to flexibilize or should be able to be adaptable to the changes that occur frequently. And such a kind of attitude or such a kind of setting of operational flexibility and organizational adaptability should be built in the administrative system to meet the upcoming changes or challenges or any existing problems. So change is one such aspect, should be one of the major reasons in order to achieve the goals of new public administration. Nothing but the organization should be very flexible enough and should be ready enough to accept any sort of change with the challenges that come up. Then the next important is client orient or client focus. Client focus is nothing but it should be people participating, or the majority of the decisions or majority of the policy should be taken with the opinion of the public, and the time of the policy making, the people should be available. The participation of the people is very important. So in that way, client focus is also one important aspect that has to be focused in order to achieve the goal. So as I told you, there are certain anti-goals of Minobrook conference. They were anti-goals. That means anti-goals in the sense, I will tell you that it is nothing but to the old administrative system or the traditional administrative system, new public administration advocates three anti-goals. You can say, according to the literature, the three anti-goals are called as anti-positivists. So it is nothing but anti-goals. In a smaller gist, I will tell you, easy explanation. Anti-goals is nothing but rejecting a definition of public administration as value-free. Thus, public administration should be value-oriented. So previously, old administration or the traditional public administration tells or defines that it is not value, the much importance should not be given to the value, but that is being rejected by the new public administration by telling that it should be value oriented. The new public administration should be value oriented. Then the second one is rejecting a rationalist and perhaps deterministic view of humankind. Since I can tell you that human behavior is very, very much unpredictable. You can never predict that one human being behaves like this only in all the situations, or the human being will remain same at every situation. You can never say that. There are unpredictable always. So in such a scenario, the public administration should focus on what administration should become rather than what administration should be. It shouldn't be very static or very rigid. See, as I told you, human behaviors are very unpredictable. We can never imagine that a same human being reacts the same way in every situation. So in that way, the new public administration will reject the rationalistic, the old type of administration. It simply says that under the term of anti-goal, it simply says that you should be always focusing on what administration should become rather than to be. So in order to make the administration more flexible, more change accepting or the challenge accepting, in that way, in order to make the administration more stronger and stable, you need to adapt all these things. So if you have to reject, like, you shouldn't keep the mindset in a similar way that this has to be like this or like this. Whenever we see the old people who are very superstitious enough, or sometimes they will be they say that this has to be done like this only, this has to be there, that that has to be placed only there. So when we listen to such things, we feel that why can't it be changed? Why can't that be viewed through a different perspective? In the same way, administration also should focus on what it should become rather than what it should be. This is what new public administration focuses on. And one more important thing under the anti-goal is nothing but it rejecting, I will tell you, rejecting politics administration dichotomy. So since administrators today are involved in policy formation and policy implementation at all the stages, so also such a dichotomy takes administration away from values. It is nothing but previously, once I can tell you that it was accepted, then later on it was denied, but again it was denied. So now we cannot divide politics from administration. You can never do that. That is very unimaginable and which is very impractical. So nowadays, if you see that all the administrators are involved in policy formulation and also implementation. So we see now the demand for the bureaucratic officers, the competition for the bureaucratic officers has been rapidly growing day by day. So the new public administration will reject the politics and administrative dichotomy. They cannot be separated. They are interlinked. They go hand in hand. They have to go coordinatingly. These are some of the important goals and anti-goals of the Minnowbrook Conference 1, which was organized, or I can tell you this meeting was held at Syracuse University in the year 1968. This is what all about the Minnowbrook Conference 1. But when we see that a trend has been following in this Minnowbrook Conference, this Minnowbrook Conference was held with a gap of 20 years. 3 Minnowbrook conferences were held with a gap of 20 years. One was organized or held in the year 1968. The second was held in the year 1988. I will show you the next slide. So I hope you can see it. In the year 1988, the second Minnowbrook Conference was held. I will tell you, it is nothing but second Minnowbrook Conference. The Frederickson, in the first Minnowbrook Conference, it was Dwight Waldo. But here, in the second Minnowbrook Conference, so many points were highlighted. So many differences were shown. So many changes were being highlighted. So I will tell you what were that. In the second Minnowbrook Conference, Frederickson summarized 9 major themes which were developed at the first Minnowbrook Conference, which ultimately had become the important aspects of public administration. So I will tell you what were the things that were observed at second Minnowbrook Conference. The field has shifted focus in insignificant measure from the management agencies to policy issues. So in the beginning, they focused on management agencies, like how that has to be and what were the old static ways and what were the traditional ways. But now the focus has been shifted from management agencies to the policy issues. Then in the second Minnowbrook Conference, social equity, there is a lot of difference between equality and equity. So here, social equity has been added to the efficiency and economy. I will tell you, in the old traditional administrations or in the old administration, efficiency and economy only was focused. But when coming to the second Minnowbrook Conference, they discussed that why shouldn't we add social equity to efficiency and economy? When you're doing things efficient in an economic way, you should see that justification is done. So in such a way, in order to, in keeping the mind, in keeping, rational or justification in mind, this social equity was added to efficiency and economy. And then in the second conference, again, they discussed about ethics, honesty, and responsibility in government have turned again to the lexicon of the public administration. Honesty and responsibility of government has been increased rapidly. They understood that problems were occurring, because there was rapid liberalization and privatization and globalization that was occurring. So the existing administration is no more capable in order to face such challenges or in order to get updated. So in such a way, all these responsibilities and ethics and honesties were being added. Then the main important Minnowbrook Conference perspective argued that, it has clearly argued that as public need change, government agencies often outlive their purposes. So, when the problems are arising, when problems keep coming, there are so many needs are there, when the public needs have been changing day by day, not one need is same or not one need is repeated and again, but the needs are always changed. They are always, they're always different from one another. So in such a way, why is the government responding in a traditional way? Why not the government is changing its purposes? Why not government is not outliving its the purpose? So in that way, the Minobrook Conference argued that why, when the public needs are changing, why shouldn't the government responsiveness change? So in such a way, change, not growth, has come to be understood as the more critical theoretical issue in the second conference. So they said that growth is different, change is different. First of all, the government needs to change. Why? Because not all the public needs are the same. They are different from each other. So in such a way, effective public administration has come to, effective public administration has come to be defined in the context of an active and participative citizenry. So it says that administration is more confined with the active participation of the citizens. So citizens also need to play an important role in the administration. So effective public administration should be more, it should make people more active, more proactive. Implementation moved center stage in studies of decision making. So after this Minobrook Conference too, the decision making in the 1950s and 1960s, but now it has been more clear and more understood that more difficult challenges should, it also has an ultimate clash with the decisions that are taken by the government. So it is nothing but actually the strict hierarchical, the strict hierarchy or the strict concept of hierarchy or the correctness of rational models or the usefulness of the exact hierarchy models were severely challenged. So whatever the existing government systems were there, whatever the existing administrations were there, they were critically challenged a lot. Why? Because when the problems are arising, when the needs are changing, the administration should be more responsive, more proactive. This was being argued very much in the Minobrook Conference too. There were so many similarities and also dissimilarities between 1 and 2. That is Minobrook Conference 1 and 2. It is nothing but the purpose of the second Minobrook Conference. The ultimate purpose of the second Minobrook Conference is nothing but to reflect upon the impact of Minobrook Conference. Like whatever changes they brought after Minobrook Conference 1, they were being questioned, they were being rechecked, they were being impacted. It brought together scholars. In Minobrook Conference 1, everybody were young. They were all the scholars who were there in the Minobrook Conference 1 were very young. And in the second Minobrook Conference, it has brought all the scholars together, both male and female as well. And of the earlier generation to discuss, in the first Minobrook Conference, as I told you, only young people were there. But in the second Minobrook Conference, it was, it felt the need that the old generation scholars also should be there in order to address how well the Minobrook Conference 1 was implemented, how well the Minobrook Conference 1 was impacted. So I will be telling you the similarities of the Minobrook Conference 1 and 2 together. So I will tell you, similarities is nothing but both the conferences focused on social equality. The major common concern or the similar concern of both the Minobrook conferences was social equality. Even in the conference 1 and the conference 2, both they focused on equality. Then the second similarity or the second common point to what they discussed was, democratic values with the special focus on ethics and accountability. See, one cannot only just be responsible. One cannot just be authoritative. One has to be very accountable. That is very important. So both the Minobrook Conference 1 and Minobrook Conference 2 has clearly focused on the ethics and accountability. And the third similarity, it is nothing but they ultimately strived to strengthen the society. The both conferences were conducted, both the conferences were held in order to focus on the strengthening the society. Government is very inevitable. And then they also debated, they clearly and once again repeatedly they debated that we have to but what they commonly spoke or commonly discussed in both the conferences is nothing but they both stressed on the normative and behavioral perspectives. So they both stressed on the normative and the behavioral perspective. These both were two similar points of the conference 1 and 2. And public servants, public servants, the important point which was very impressive in both the conference was they said or they focused on this point, telling that public servants or the public servants, you can say the what public servants, and they are seen to be more considered as the changing agents. So they are the one who will bring about the change. So shared concern for state of the discipline of the public administration. And again, they focused on the discipline. Public administration as a separate discipline. We know that also was being focused in both the conferences. The discipline was being focused. And, all those who attended the conference 1 in the year 1968 were all invited to the second conference also, which was held in the 1988. So all those who attended the first conference came and participated in the second conference too. Then they felt that, there should be one common interchange between the journalists and specialists. There is a quite a difference. These two people are two different areas or two different professions where it is when their ideas are exchanged, they will create a lot of impact. So there should be a free interchange between the generalists and the specialists. And also, if we discuss about the dissimilarities about the Minobrook Conference 1 and 2, if we discuss about the dissimilarities, they literally, compared many things in a wider way. They compared many things in a much wider way. I can tell you in what all aspects they found out the dissimilarities. While in the first Minobrook Conference, most of the participants had a political science background. The people who came and sat in the conference 1 to discuss about the public administration were not coming, or majority of the people were not from the public ad background, but majority of the people were from the political science background. So this was one dissimilarity. That means, that was not being repeated in the second conference. And when it comes to second Minobrook Conference, all people belonged to different policy sciences. So here, what happened in the second conference was, people came from history background and economics background and political science background, sociology and law. It was not only the political science people who came and sat, but it was the other people who come from social sciences have joined the second Minobrook Conference. And also, there were age differences. As I told you, in the Minobrook Conference 1, only young people participated. Whereas coming to the second Minobrook conferences, there were age differences. As I told you, the old generation scientists or the thinkers or also were attending this second Minobrook Conference. Minobrook Conference 2 had members of higher age group as well as, with the lower age group, and also there was gender parity. So both male and female participated. Whereas in the Minnow Brook Conference 1, only male participants were there, and that too they were too young. And in the second Minnow Brook Conference, as I told you, both male and female participated in an equal proportion. And however, there were less minority groups that were represented. So there were not much minority groups who participated in the second Minnow Conference. And when we come to the next dissimilarity between the Minnow Brook Conference 1 and 2, the mood, the tone, the temper, and orientation differed. Why? Because the frequency or the thought process of a young individual when compared to an older individual will be completely different, will be entirely different. We cannot compare the young energy with the old energy always. So, however, the energy levels are different. So as I told you, the mood, the temper, and whatever the ideologies were there, they were entirely differed. Why? Because in the second Minnow Brook Conference, we involved old people as well as the new people. But Minnow Brook Conference 1 was very confrontational. Confrontational is nothing but they just argued out of anger. There was less thought process, but there was too much of anger or too much of aggressive nature. They expressed their ideas with so much of aggression. So confrontational thing was, observed in the Minnow Brook Conference 1. And, they questioned, in the Minnow Brook Conference 1, they questioned the very foundations of the discipline, like politics, administration, dichotomy, all this foundation discipline, these things. So, the concept, the basic foundations of the discipline of public administration were politics, administration, dichotomy. Then the second one was public-private similarity. Then the administration being a science. Then hierarchical view of organization. All these were some of the foundational principles of or discipline, or there were foundational principles of the public administration as a discipline. So these all were being questioned with such a confrontational tone. That means they were questioned with so much of aggression. They were only focused on the instead of problem, they started only questioning. Whereas the trend in the second Minnow Brook Conference was changed a bit. So here it was more civil. It was more practical. They calmed down and they were exchange of, ideas of the older people and also the younger generation. So it was more respectful towards the seniors, and they did not question much with the foundation. In fact, or indeed, they focused on the, what should be the solution to the problems and what are the practical ways that we can deal with the problems is what the scenario observed in the second Minnow Brook Conference. And then the thematic focus was different. The theories, what sort of theories they focused in the Minnow Brook Conference 1 were entirely different with the theories that they focused in the Minnow Brook Conference 2. This was one of the major similarity that was observed. Then, themes, thematic focus is nothing but themes such as leadership, constitutional and legal perspectives, and then technology policy, and also economic perspectives. These all themes, what perspective they had in the first Minnow Brook Conference was entirely different in the second Minnow Brook Conference. The focus was different. The Minnow Brook Conference 1 was ultimately anti-behavioral, more normative, normative, you can say it is much with the old traditional principles. It was not practical. It was very rigid, very static. So that concept or that perspective was changed in the Minnow Brook Conference 2. It became more contribution of behavioral sciences in the public administration. So it became more behavioral rather than being normative. Then social, political, and economic environments, when observed in the Minnow Brook Conference 1, were entirely different at the time of Minobrook Conference too. Why? Because the social, economic, political situations or the conditions that were prevailing in the society in the year 1968 were entirely different, because the responsiveness of the government has changed, the solutions of the government were changed. So the scenario which was existing in the year 1988 at the time of Minobrook Conference 2 was entirely different. So you cannot focus on the same scenario with the same solutions, with the same ideas or same themes. The entire thing was changed. More of privatization was taking place in the second Minobrook Conference. Why? Because at that time LPG was prevailing a lot. LPG, or the privatization, has become the third party of the government. So more involvement of the privatization, more free markets, more open markets were there into the picture. So there was less government and more governance. So as privatizations or as LPG has involved, has taken part, or it has interfered, the functioning of the government has entirely changed. So there has been less focus on the framework and there is more focus on the functioning. So as I told you, less government and more governance. So there is a lot of a difference. And Minobrook Conference 1 rejected politics administration dichotomy. And again, there was this contradiction between the Minobrook Conference 1 and 2, as Minobrook Conference 2 accepted this, but again it has denied that. Then Minobrook Conference 1 was very optimistic. As you know, what is the difference between optimistic and pessimistic? Optimistic is much in a positive way. So the new public administration would solve all society problems. So the initiation was done of the new public administration in the first Minobrook Conference. So that was the conference where they started introducing the new public administration. So they had so much of expectations. So they were very much optimized towards this concept of new public administration. So they thought that this new PA, this NPA, new public administration, would solve all the problems of the society. And Minobrook Conference 2 had constrained to hopefulness. So after observing these many years, after seeing the proper functioning of the government, they believed that the state has come to stay, but it did not want to overload it. They understood the state have to face the problems. They understood the state has to, respond. The government has to respond to the problems, but at the same time, it shouldn't be burdened. If burdened or if overloaded, that will be a delay in the process. So ultimately, the people are going to be the affected ones. So in such a way, the over expectations or the different perspective is being created in this second Minobrook Conference. So in such a way, I can tell you, or I can sum up the similarities and the dissimilarities of the Minobrook Conference 1 and 2. And lastly, when coming to the Minobrook Conference 3, I will tell you what is it about. Minobrook Conference 3, as I told you, between every conference, as I told you, 3 conferences were held so far. And each conference has a year gap of 20 years, has an age gap of 20 years. So the first Minobrook Conference was held in the year 1968. The second one was held in the year 1988. And the third Minobrook Conference was held in 2008. So Minobrook conferences in 1968 and 1988 discussed the need for increasing rigor and relevance in public administration. While at the same time they were pursuing the diversity and unique identity. At the time, when Minobrook Conference 1 and 2 were, held, there was so much of, they fought for the change, they fought for the relevance, and they wanted proper addressing of the problem. They want exact solution to the problem. Indeed, there was the historical development of public administration. And there was so much of identity crisis. So by the third Minobrook Conference, the identity crisis was no longer a center focus. So in the 1 and 2 conferences, they strived for so much of identity. But whereas coming to the Minobrook Conference 3, the identity crisis was no longer a central focus. This discipline had its own journals, and it has trained so many scholars, especially for this new public administration. It was not like these scholars who were sitting in the first conference and the second conference, but by the time of the third conference, they, I mean to say, they trained so many scholars, especially to focus on the study of the new public administration. So they trained the scholars, and they wanted the trained scholars to be in the conference to discuss about the further changes. And rather much of the discussion centered on public administration. They wanted the scholars to participate in order to focus on the subject matter. I'll tell you what is that about. I'll tell you, this phase one of Minobrook Conference 3 took place with almost 56 trained scholars, and over 2 days with a professional facilitator. I'll tell you, this conference went on for about 2 days long. 56 scholars and trained scholars. I need to specify this. Trained scholars have participated in this conference, which went long for 2 days. So they were the main focus, or they addressed, or they, sorted out that there are 3 major challenges of public administration. The participants felt and they debated extensively on them. Those 3 challenges were: they wanted to support the application of diverse and rigorous methodological approaches. So they wanted the new theories, the theory, as I told you, the thematic focus should be shifted. And then continuing to encourage theoretical depth. For every problem, for every need, there should be a proper, perfect emphasis done through theory. And then they wanted to continue this, which was already discussed in the conference 1 and 2. They wanted to continue the same thing. They continued to encourage the theoretical path or the depth in the third Minobrook conference also. And one more important challenge was promoting relevance without compromising methodological rigor and depth. So they don't want to compromise on the methods and the theories. So they wanted perfect methods and the theories so that it could go on for the further generations without creating any chaos. So next, I would be telling you, just a minute. So these were the major concepts or challenges that were discussed in the Minobrook Conference 3. But by the end of this, there were so many critiques. As it is very natural that so many critiques are, there will be so much of criticism on every concept. There will be so much of criticism about every new beginning or new challenge. There were some of the critics, that is the challenge of remaining relevant. They questioned, they questioned between the public administration and what's the black public administrator. And they also criticized on the teaching of public administration, especially the Asian countries. And they said that, is really there a global public administration prevailing or no? So all these sort of criticisms existed while this Minobrook conference was going on. And they also criticized on, has this public administration been dominated by economics? So all such criticisms were there, but they were left unanswered. But I can tell you that the new approaches in the public administration are like branches to a tree. These branches, they can grow independently. From one another, scholars have formed academic groups with the purpose of pursuing new ideas and knowledge in the field of public administration. And one more important point here is that the number of public administration scholars has grown not only just in United States, but all over the world. Because of this new approaches, the scholars are being increased to the next level. They are being numerously increased. And throughout the world, all over the world, especially in Europe, Asia, Canada, South America, Australia, New Zealand, and China. though American scholars still dominate knowledge building in public administration, new theories and concepts are being built by non-American scholars. Though, as I told you, that this public administration is very young and it is been actually originated by the American concept. It is originated in the United States of America, but so many theories, so many new theories, new concepts were given by non-Americans, non-American scholars. That means other scholars all over the world, from Asia, from European, people have come up because of this new public administration. The new approaches have been, has given a lot of life to the old administration. So they came up with their own unique concepts. They came up with their own unique perspectives. So in such a way, this Minnow Group Conference 1, 2, and 3 were held at Syracuse University with a year gap of 20 years between one conference to the other. And new public administration was so much developed, and it was, the new approaches has been given and so many changes. And as I told you, it is more of governance than government. So less focus on the framework and more focus on the function. So by this, I would be concluding my class, and tomorrow I would be dealing with the public choice approach and new public management. I hope it is clear.
Madam, important questions cheppara madam. Please tell important questions in this chapter.
Ma'am, also discuss about the important questions.
Surely,
Yes, madam.
I will make sure the important questions are given to you. Please wait for some time and they will be provided to you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. వాగి వెళ్ళిపోతావు తుక్కుమని.
What?
Sir, please previously the important questions చెప్పండి.
ఏంది మ్యామ్ వెళ్ళిపోయిందా?
వెళ్ళిపోకుండా నిద్రపోతుందా ఇంకా?
అదే ఇంపార్టెంట్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అని ఇప్పటి నుంచి అడుగుతుంటే ఇంకా చెప్పకుండా ఏంది చెప్తా అని చెప్పి.
అదే అబ్బాయి ఏంటి అర్థమైతలేదు అసలు ఈ రోజు. ఇప్పుడు చూస్తే
యాక్చువల్లీ హౌ మెనీ యూనిట్స్ యు ఆర్ కంప్లీట్?
4th యూనిట్ డియర్. 4 ఫినిష్. 4 యూనిట్. 4th యూనిట్ అయిపోయింది. అవును, మొత్తం అయిపోయింది 4th.
ఓకే, ఈ 4 యూనిట్స్ అయినా చెప్పాలి కదా వాళ్ళు.
అవును, అదే రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ కదా. ఏం క్లాస్ చెప్పేసి వెళ్ళిపోతే ఎట్లా? హూ విల్ టేక్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ సార్? 4 యూనిట్ చెప్పింది. మొన్న కూడా ఇట్లా అడిగితే దాన్ని కట్ చేసి పడేస్తున్నారు మేడం. ఏం చెప్పాలి?
హలో,
యాక్చువల్లీ నేను ఫస్ట్ నే అడిగాను మళ్ళీ ఇప్పుడు కూడా అడిగాను.
హలో, మీకు బుక్స్ కలెక్ట్ చేసుకున్నారా మీరు?
ఏంది?
అవును, కలెక్ట్ చేసుకున్నారా
బుక్స్? మీకు అంటే బుక్స్ ఇచ్చారా మీకు యూనివర్సిటీలో?
యా, ఇచ్చిండ్రు.
మీరు ఏడా? ఆంధ్రానా హైదరాబాదా? మీది ఆంధ్రానా హైదరాబాదా? మాకు ఇచ్చినారు, అప్పుడే తీసుకున్నాం.
అట్లా కాదు, మాది తెలంగాణనే, కానీ మాకు ఇక్కడ స్టడీ సెంటర్ పోతే బుక్స్ రాలేదని చెప్తున్నారు. సో
తెలంగాణలో ఏడా అండి?
మన భద్రాద్రి కొత్తగూడెం.
ఓకే ఓకే, ఆడ పోయి అడగండి. మేము జూబ్లీ హిల్స్ పోయి తీసుకున్నాం అప్పుడు.
ఏమో మరి ఇక్కడ పోతే నాకు ఒక ఇంగ్లీష్ ఒక్కటి ఇచ్చాడు, ఇంకోటేమో స్టాక్ రాలేదు అని చెప్పాడు. సెకండ్ ఇయర్ కి నోటిఫికేషన్ ఇస్తే
లేదు, ప్రతి ఒక్క స్టడీ సెంటర్ బ్రదర్ పంపించినారు.
యాక్చువల్లీ ఇక్కడ దుర్గమ్మ చెరువు ఉంది కదా ఒక యూనివర్సిటీ, అంబేద్కర్, అక్కడ తీసుకోవచ్చు.
అడగండి.
పొలిటికల్ సైన్స్ ఇంగ్లీష్ ఒకటే ఇచ్చారు. మొన్న
ఓకే.
స్టడీ మన కాలేజ్కి వెళ్తే వాళ్ళు ఏమన్నారంటే ఇంకా రాలేదు అది ఇది అని చెప్పారు. సో ఇంకోటి
మీరు
ఏంటంటే
ఒక్కసారి ఏం చేయండి అంటే కాలేజ్కి వెళ్ళండి. కాలేజ్కి వెళ్ళి ఇంకోసారి అడగండి, ఇస్తే ఇస్తారు, లేకపోతే బ్లాక్లెస్ తీసుకోండి బయట.
సరే సరే. ఇది
ఉండదు కదా.
ఇంకోటి ఇంకో చిన్న డౌట్, ఈ సెకండ్ ఇయర్ ఫీజు అనేది కట్టేశారా మీరంతా?
అరే ఇప్పుడేంటి, ఎప్పుడో అయిపోయింది కదా. ఇంకా యాక్చువల్లీ ఇంకా టైం ఉంది. ఆ టైంకి
లేదు నేను పేమెంట్
ఫీజు ఎక్కువ కదా లేట్ అయితే.
నాదేంటంటే డౌట్ ఏంటిదంటే ఆల్రెడీ నేను పేమెంట్ చేశాను.
ఓకే.
సో కాకపోతే ఫస్ట్ సెమ్ అయింది, సెకండ్ సెమ్ కే మళ్ళీ అంటే సెకండ్ ఇయర్ ఇచ్చాడు, అది కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అవుతున్నా నేను.
యాక్చువల్లీ ఏంటంటే ఫస్ట్ సెమ్ ఇంకా అవ్వకుండానే సెకండ్ సెమ్ కి ఆల్రెడీ ఫీజు కట్టమని మెసేజ్ పెట్టారు. మీకు మెసేజ్ రాలేదా?
వచ్చింది నేను పేమెంట్ చేశాను, కాకపోతే కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అవుతున్నా నేను. సెకండ్ సెమ్ కాకముందే సెకండ్ ఇయర్ కి ఎందుకు ఆప్షన్ ఇచ్చిండా అని.
ఎందుకో తెలియదు, బట్ అయితే ఇంకా ఐ థింక్ మళ్ళీ మెసేజ్ కూడా చేసిండ్రు. మీరు మళ్ళీ కడితే బెటర్. ఇంకా లేట్ చేస్తే ఇంకా ఎక్కువ ఫీజు పెరుగుతుంది.
ఫైన్ 200 రూపీస్ ఉంటుంది.
ఓకే. ఇప్పుడు
మీరు
నాకు
ఒకసారి స్టడీ సెంటర్ వెళ్ళండి, లేకుండా హైదరాబాద్ జూబ్లీ
నేను జూబ్లీ హిల్స్ అంటే నేను ఇప్పుడు భద్రాచలం నుంచి మళ్ళీ హైదరాబాద్ రావాలంటే 300 కిలోమీటర్స్.
మీరు ఆంధ్రానా?
కాదు, తెలంగాణ.
మీది తెలంగాణ. ఓకే. గైడ్స్ అయినా కొనుక్కోవచ్చు కదా, లేకపోతే పీడిఎఫ్ కూడా అవైలబుల్ ఉంది కదా.
లేదు కదా, ఎవరినాడు ఇప్పుడు నేను నిన్న మేడం కి క్లాస్ చెప్పేటప్పుడు నేను మెసేజ్ కూడా పెట్టాను, మేడంకే పెట్టినా, మేడం మీరు చెప్పేది అర్థం కావట్లేదు, మీరు ఇట్లా మ్యూట్ చేసి పెడితే మాకు ఏ డౌట్ ఉన్నా కూడా ఎవరిని అడగాలి, మళ్ళీ దీంట్లో మీరు చెప్పే సబ్జెక్ట్ కి మాకు బుక్స్ కూడా ఇవ్వలేదు, ఇంకా మాకు పీడిఎఫ్ ఫైల్ ఏమన్నా దొరుకుతుందని మెసేజ్ పెడితే దానికి రెస్పాన్స్ లేదు, ఏమీ లేదు. ఆ రోజు క్లాస్ మొత్తం జరిగిన మ్యూట్ కూడా తీయలేదు. ఇక లాస్ట్
నా దగ్గర ఉంది యాక్చువల్లీ. యూట్యూబ్ లో కూడా ఈ క్లాసెస్ జరుగుతున్నాయి.
యూట్యూబ్ లో చూస్తున్నా, కానీ ఇప్పుడు బుక్ ఉన్నది వేరు, ఇప్పుడు సబ్జెక్ట్ చెప్పింది కనీసం నాకు ఐడెంటిఫై ఉండాలి కదా. ఇప్పుడు నేను బుక్ తీస్తే నాకు ఈ సబ్జెక్ట్ చెప్తున్నారు, నాకు ఈజీ ఉంటది.
అవును, ఎందుకంటే ఉంటే ఏం చెప్తున్నారు అనేది అర్థం